So here was a really cool tactic opportunity, which didn't end up happening, but I took kind of a calculated risk that I can take this pawn, actually, and you can't take the pawn on b7. The reason why is you go over here, you actually just get completely cheesed on the king side, because you start with bishop g4 check. Now, obviously, the only way to stop the check, which actually is the engine best move, is to give away the queen on f3, but if you don't do that, let's count how many squares you can go to. You really only have 2 moves. I'm completely covering this diagonal with the bishop. I'm completely covering this, completely covering this. So the only squares you can actually go to are e2 and f2 and e1. So let's imagine if you go to e1, well, then I choose you with this bishop. Again, count the squares that are available. We're pretty much running out of options here. You have to go back, and then you get cheesed this way. And if you want to delay the process, you start by moving your bishop up, then you sack your bishop, then you go back, then you still get cheesed over on the king side. So what happens if you don't do that? If instead of playing forward, I think I covered this, but you play back, just going back to e1, well, then you get your hand instantly. So all that to say, you actually cannot take you can't take this pawn. It's a poison pawn. You have to develop with the bishop. And that was totally fine. Then I moved my bishop up, and the game kind of goes like normal, and I'll just play out the rest of the game. So basically, round 2 of this tournament was not good, especially in my games against Nick Feisel. So we'll go through those pretty quick. This game, I had some chances. It kind of took a King's Gambit-like structure. I don't know what inspired me to do that. Lunacy is probably the answer. It kind of makes sense maybe to move the king out of the way, but it makes a lot more sense to move back because since this is a King's Gambit, but Black's king is on e7, I'm never really going to have this problem with queen h4 check. So it makes more sense to move the king back. The problem is basically that Black just has this huge armada of pawns on the king side, and it's just like, where did these 2 pawns come from? I mean, they came from the d file and e file, but my goodness. And then this was just some nonsense here. All Black has to do is take here first and then move the king out of the way. Now, this was my last chance right about here. I missed a tactic, which is to take this pawn on f4. Obviously, you can't take back because then you lose the queen. Interestingly enough, you can't take with the queen because knight d5 check, forking the king and the queen. But I missed that, and all that you have to do if you don't take here is just simply move the queen to another square. And Black's still winning. Engine recommends queen f5, and then everything's fine. There's no knight forks here. This bishop's got to get out of the way because now the queen is defended, and that's about the end of my hope. So I moved back here. I don't even fully remember the reason why. I just knew that maybe my queen would be in danger there, and then I just pretty much got demolished from here on out. Sacrifices the exchange, but he's still up. This was a little bit okay because I had maybe at least some chances on paper. I mean, but this is just crazy. Where are all my pawns here, and why are there so many pawns? How are there Irish pawns here? They all just came over from the D and E files. My pieces are all in the back rank. Yes, I'm up the exchange, but I'm not up the exchange for material, and these bishops are way better than these rooks right now. So I run for the hills. I get over there as fast as I could, generally exchange the pieces off, and then you've really got to get going to stop these pawns. Crazy enough, the best move is to move back here. Just going forward just kind of encourages the lion's den. Then you get cheesed here, and it's all over. It's all over right here. So by moving king d2, you kind of get the possibility of, if you get in this position, well, your pawn is never going to promote. So as long as I can get here quick enough, then you're forced to do a move like this. And then maybe I can hide for just a minute longer. Now I'm definitely going to still lose this game, but it's not as obviously losing. So king d2 pushes here, which is way better. I move over, then the check, then over here, then the check, and then it's lights out. Now there's still like some hope because material's not that big, but it's just black's able to get to these pawns, kill them. These pawns are going to promote, and I'm forced here in basically some form of zugzwang, keeping them down because I can never leave. I can never go over here to defend these pawns because the moment I leave is the moment I lose. And then right here, I resign the game. That was a tough one because I just got destroyed starting on move like 7 or 8, and there was really no hopes of recovery. But that was a fun game to watch. This is another game where I got just absolutely demolished. The game took a pretty normal start, and I was actually pretty okay with how it turned out here, just because I'm like, well, I've got a big center. I'll be able to kind of get, a pretty decent sort of structure right there. My bishop can get out really quick, and I'm able to get over. The only problem is I just missed the spur of the moment move that I needed to make, and it just put me in such a dangerous position, which is, I had the right idea, but I just completely miscounted the execution. What I want to do is get my rook into the center and then just start moving. And so what I need to do is actually just start with that, then move my king over here. And this bishop, I don't actually know if I want it to be on e6 or e7, so maybe I'll want it to develop somewhere else, so I actually shouldn't move it there. But I know I really probably want this rook in the center. But I missed the threat. I played bishop e7 first. Now I have one last chance to make things right. What I need to do is get my king over here. It's okay if the rook doesn't land on d8. Maybe I'll want to push it and get it out this way or something like that. But what I need to do is understand that the threat of bishop h3 is coming. And if I want a chance of getting over to the queen side, or the king side, this is the last chance to do it. Unfortunately, I missed it. Play rook d8, then bishop a3 comes in there, h3, and now it's hopeless. Only move is to force up, and then I'm really starting to get in trouble here. That was a huge threat on the spot just because it's such a pain to meet. And at the very least, like, let's just say you start with this move. It's like, pick a move, I mean, here is terrible. And I don't even know what you're supposed to do about that, because obviously knight takes g7 is pretty crushing. What you're supposed to do is not play either of those moves. Play c5, which just seems like you might as well lose the queen, because this is just not an acceptable square for your queen to be in a position like this, or for your king to be. I missed the threat. He didn't see that one. It's still apparently equal over here, but don't ask me why. Obviously the idea is you want to get this bishop out of there, and so if the bishop has to go back, it's not quite so bad. But still, I completely missed it. I did g6 because I wanted to prevent this move. I saw it a move basically too late. Now it says this is a miss-win because the correct line it wants you to do basically is start with a move like this, and the engine recommends knight d4, and after this check you push on peasant, you take here, and then you have this move, and then you move here to b6, and this is only supposed to be plus 4.4 for white. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think I'd be certainly happy to give up 4 pawns to get out of this position and have my king somewhere over here. But anyways, that was missed. Played a4 instead, which is still just crushing because then you have to make concessions. Game goes on. Brilliant move. You take, and then the threat is just Mongo. I mean, really, this king is running out of squares here. Oh, goodness gracious. All of these are taken up. You can't really move here because then this is coming. So what you have to do basically is just absolutely go ham here and try to hide around the corner. Now, I missed this opportunity here, which I thought was good because it makes sense. I'm going to pawn, and this queen's under fire, but black takes first, then hits you with the rook. Then you're really in trouble. Now you hold on for a little bit longer, but obviously you lose the piece there. This was kind of a desperado check because I was looking at a sequence of, okay, well, if you take here, and then I take here, if you move here, I go here, and then if you move here, I go here, and then if you move forward, that's actually completely out of checks, and white's going to win. But I was looking at if you move back to a square like this, maybe I can check you again. I did a complete miscalculation here, and I thought maybe this would lead to a perpetual check. It really doesn't at the end of the day. All you need to do to get out of it is, again, just get your king through this window over here, and you'll make it. And obviously, you can't ever take this rook because then just here is checkmate. So even just as fine as not taking is you just move forward, and then you've got nothing. And this is just, I mean, completely hopeless. And then you're forced to basically give up the queen because check here, check, and then that's the final straw. You have no way to defend this queen. You have to take, then you lose it, and then the game ends in just a few moves. I thought maybe I could do a spite check just to see how long I could last, but I was like, well, as long as I can keep this safe, he'll take here, and then the game will keep going, and I'll lose eventually. But actually, move the piece down here, you just instantly get checkmated. And that was my second loss in a row in round 2. So here in this game, as you can tell, I obviously did not make the mistake of not getting my queen or my king over to this side of the game like I did in that previous one. But I did make a huge mistake here. I played knight g4. Somehow in my head, I imagined that there was some craziness with... I just completely forgot this bishop was here, and I forgot that f2 was defended. So I thought you had to do something like moving the queen back here, and maybe there was even some crazy like sacking move here. But this was just a complete nonsense. All you need to do is push the h-pawn forward and force to move the piece back. You've got 2 attackers on e5, and I've only got 1 defender, and so white just starts up here completely up a pawn. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm probably going to lose this game if I don't do something crazy, so I did something crazy. And this also fizzled out. This game was just a game fueled by, I'm going to lose, I might as well get something from it. Now, I completely missed the thread here. I should not worry about this. I should start with the check here, and then if you bring the king back, well, equality. Okay, I'm not up a pawn or down the pawn anymore, and he's got really annoying moves, but maybe it's not so easy to develop this knight to a square that you want to have it long term, and so the game goes on. The game is all zeros according to the engine, but I missed that, and then obviously if you don't take, then I can take maybe the pawn and start attacking things, but it gets a little dicey. So this bishop is really annoying, so I just basically said I'm going to get rid of it at all costs. So takes, and then... Okay. Now I started saying, well, I'm not going to win, but this rook is poorly placed. Maybe if I can crash through in some way over here on this side of the board, I might have some chances. I can win back some of that material. Takes here. And so I thought to myself, well, this isn't ideal, but both of these rooks are about the last place you want them to be. You'd want them to be in the center on an open file, not caught basically in a pawn pyramid. And yes, you can kind of push the pawns out of the way and get out pretty quickly, but I just felt like there was some hope here. So I started looking at, can I crash through here on the pawn side? And the problem with this is, if you you can't obviously just like push forward, because that's not going to work out. And then obviously you can't do nothing. You have to bring the king over or move somewhere to defend it. So he brings the king over. But then I think to myself, let's really go crazy. He's got his queen and his king lined up. So maybe if I push the c pawn, there could be something crazy. Because obviously you have to do something about that. And if you take, I was looking at, well, maybe then I could bring my rooks over and I can stack them. And maybe there's going to be these crazy things like pushing d3 at the right moment. And so move the rook over. It makes sense why you do b3 first, because then when you push d3, it's defended, but I didn't see that. Move over here. You have to get out of the way of the check at some point, basically, because if you don't do that, you're going to run into a situation where there's a check that you get caught into. So you have to do that first. And then I thought, okay, well, now I'm finally going to push d3, and if you take, then I take over here. Now, this is a huge blunder, because obviously you just take here, and you have to move the rook first. But obviously white's up a ton of material here. But I thought that, maybe there's some opportunity here where things might get a little dicey. And so one example of that after takes is that obviously you have to move the rook first, but there aren't actually that many great squares to put it on. Let's just say you put it on a square like, well, he did put it on d1, which is a perfectly fine move. But then I take here. This is where you have to be careful, because you can't take this pawn, because either way you take here, you can actually get this sweet checkmate here, even though you're down a ton of material. So you have to be a little careful here. After you move the pawn, you can't take immediately. He pushes e5, which makes a lot of sense. Then I get to have my knight over, and you still obviously can't take because of the threat. Moving over here makes a lot of sense. Just makes it so now you can take this pawn, and if we trade these pieces off the board, am I really going to checkmate black? And so right now, somehow the position is close to equal here. I'm supposed to play queen f or king f2 apparently, but just take advantage of the fact that the rook sucks. But then I start getting into a position where I'm a little bit like, okay, maybe I can get something here. That's a great move. And now I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to lose this game. I might as well play on just a few more moves. So I make this knight move back, just with the idea that, where are you supposed to go as white? Now, obviously, the correct move, it makes sense. Of course, do here, takes. And then in this position, white is up the exchange. This rook's going to become great, and then he's just going to start gobbling up all these pawns. So I completely missed the fact that queen d6 check was an option, forcing the queen trade. But it allows me to do some crazy things. Then I play this move. Okay, now obviously I'm threatening this check right here, which is going to win the queen, but you have to do something about it. But suggest a move as white here that's good. There are not many of them. There's actually only basically one good move, which is queen b7 check. And the reason why is, let's just say that you want to get out of this pin and you do a move like, oh, I don't know. You make a move like this, and now you're going to win this pawn. Checkmate. Somehow, the white king has absolutely no squares to go, and so there aren't actually that many possible moves that are great. And if you try to say, well, I'm going to prevent the threat of you moving your knight over here, then you have the even better threat of knight e5 check, takes, and then this is checkmate. And so you get in a position where even if I actually didn't see this in the game, where I thought that if you play this move, I was going to make, I think this move right here, which is actually like terrible. I completely missed it. But I thought, well, this is a threat now, and if you move to a square like this to stop it, then I'm going to come in from different angles. But I completely missed the threat. But he did not miss the threat. He knew that this was a dangerous position. He plays the correct move, b7, and then you get into a position where actually just like a forced repetition is kind of repeated over and over again. White has to always keep checking me. He can never let me leave. You can't move here because you get mated. But I'm just stuck always going back here. Now the best move at this point is to move forward. And then if you go back here, check. I move up here, here. And you can't let me get to c7 because then you're out of checks. And then I'm going to have the checkmate threat here. So all you have to do as white is just keep moving and just making sure that you stay on the white squares so that if I, you know, try to escape, you're always able to check me. So this is basically how the game ends here. I offered a draw, and with that, I got a pretty good score. I lost 2 games in the tournament, and I drew 1, but other than that, I won every single game. So pretty good tournament, and definitely exciting to see a lot of positions that I never would have seen without doing a Bongcloud tournament. So that's about it.